Hey, LEC 35, this is Mark. I wanted to run through a couple things with you on the 6.2 activity. It's pretty comprehensive and there's a lot of parts to it, but I just wanted to point out a couple things to you to make it maybe a little easier on you as far as, and actually easier on Jeff and I when we're assessing these, because LEC is looking for kind of a particular format. I mean, there can be a lot of you can have all of the elements in place. It just kind of takes some time to find it. So I'm going to encourage you not to try and reinvent the wheel on this project, and really utilize some of the aspects of this activity that have already basically been created by other people in examples that we leave for you. So I'm going to jump off here real quick and go from the activity page here, and I'm going to scroll up to the student resources page. I'm just going to go ahead and open that up in a new tab so I can go back and forth. Okay, so this is the Module 6 student resources page, and if you scroll down this page, there's a couple of elements here to take advantage of. One, there's a video here, and that's great. The next is that there is an example of an exemplary formative assessment, and we'll get back to that one. And then there's some other assignment examples, and I'm going to go ahead and check out one of those too, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up in a new tab. And why don't I just open that one as well? Okay, so basically what you're being asked to do, and let's go back to the first page here to take a look at the parameters of the assignment. Okay, so in the 6.2 activity, we're looking at a unit plan, okay? A formative assessment unit plan. And so the things that they want you to do are pretty standard to any kind of unit plan or lesson plan you put together. We want to know who the audience is, what the objectives are, what the standards are, and then what the activities are. Okay, so we've got all these things in place, and when we talk about the activities in place here are going to be, what happens in the assessment plan, the formative assessments. Okay, and so we're looking at 3 distinct formative assessments. Okay, 3 distinct formative assessments. So if I jump to one of these lesson plans here, this is the This is the 6.2 example. I'm playing with a new toy here, sorry. The 6.2 example of National Education Technology Standard Narratives. And if you look here, it's got the audience, it's got the objectives, it's got the standards, and then it has the activities, okay? And so the activities are using Google Docs, students will collaborate on a narrative. Using a Web 2.0 concept mapping tool, students will create a graphic organizer. Using Google Docs, students will complete this. And then using Symbolo, students will create a web mix that represents the artifacts and narratives. And so when I come down here to the formative assessments, right, my first formative assessment is laid out right here. Google Docs. This is specifically what it is. In pairs, students will write a paragraph using an artifact that meets the NETS T1 narrative. Okay, and that this is specific to this thing, but just notice that the formative assessments are indicated specifically. This is number 1. And here's an example of what that might look like. Oh, I should be scrolling down here, shouldn't I? Okay, and then it lists specifically the feedback here. Each student will use the comment feature, and this is the student response. These things in bold here are the specific Tuttle's levels of feedback, the Tuttle stages of feedback. So this one has narrates basically 3 different types of Tuttle's feedback. Next, formative assessment number 2 is the NETS teacher concept map. This is what they have to do. This is the feedback. Next is a Google Hangout. This is what they have to do. This is the feedback. So you have 3 different pieces of formative assessment. 3 different formative assessments. And then we have our summative assessment. Okay, and attached to that formative assessment is a rubric. The only thing you need a rubric for is the summative assessment. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at this one. This is a 2nd grade example. Audience objectives, standards. These are the learning activities. They're going to read stories, watch videos, create a Wordle, and create a Poplet. So again, formative assessment number 1. They're going to work on a discussion board. Okay, so we look at the directions and then the Tuttle stages of formative assessment. And this one breaks it down really nicely. And I would almost prefer that you do this. This is highlighted here on the student resources page on this example of an exemplary formative assessment block, where we have the objective, we have the assessment, and this is using a Web 2.0 tool called VoiceThread, and then it goes through each of these different Tuttle stages. The student response, the monitor, the diagnose, the share feedback, student uses feedback to learn and report growth, and it tells specifically what the feedback is at each of these stages. You don't have to go that far. You can utilize the same protocol that this one did, where you just kind of you hit different stages, like what the feedback's going to be at different stages, or like that other example, and like this 2nd grade example, you can hit each of those Tuttle stages. Okay, the students will use guidelines to submit an original response. What the feedback is on monitoring. The teacher will read responses by students looking for understanding. So we're able to kind of, you as a teacher are able to really look at each of these stages of formative assessment and highlight what's going to happen at each of those stages. Okay, and you can see, so that was formative assessment number 1, had its own content block in this case. Formative assessment 2 has its own content block using Poplet, which is a Web 2.0 tool, and what they're going to do, and then how what the feedback is on each of Tuttle's stages. Okay, formative 3, Socrative exit ticket. Right, they're using Socrative, which is an app for either the computer or for your device or a device that allows. It's like a student clicker, right? So this talks about the different stages. Looks like there's a quiz that they do through Socrative, and there's a link to it right there, which is cool. And then last but not least, after our 3 formative assessments, we have the summative assessment. They're creating a Google slideshow about what makes a good friend, and that summative assessment contains a rubric. All right, it's just really important that you have all those elements and use the examples to kind of guide the way you do it. This, in the example of the NETS project, the NETS assessment plan, they put the entire unit plan, the entire formative assessment plan into a Google Doc, and then embedded that Google Doc into a content block in Haiku, whereas the 2nd grade one created a different content block for each one of the formative assessments. Okay, it's all a matter of kind of where you are, what style you want it to portray, how comfortable you are in Haiku building all the different content blocks. It's purely up to you at that point. But I just wanted to make sure that I discussed with you in this screencast what you need. And definitely the thing that we hit more often than not when we have participants in the cohorts that are completing these is they miss the Tuttle's feedback section. Okay, and if I go back to the assignment itself, in the assessment plan, you're going to identify 3 formative assessments, considering the tools you read about on page 2 and 3 in the online textbook. Identify 3 formative assessments you would utilize and explain how each would measure progress toward mastery. You need to use a different tool for each formative assessment, and at least one of them should include a Web 2.0 tool. So, 2 of them can contain, something that you hand out, something that students, it could be like a group discussion, face-to-face, but one of them should be a Web 2.0 tool. And you guys have a whole tool bag full of those back from Module 3. And then the second part of that is the feedback methods. Explain how you would provide feedback using 3 different methods, which also includes what you expect the students will do with the feedback. Please sure to reference the relevant Tuttle's stage for the feedback you provide. Okay, so up above this content block is Tuttle's complete article on formative assessment. For your FYI, I know that there's a lot to do this week, and you may not want to read a full-on article there, but just so that you get a good flavor of these being, and I'm jumping back over to the student resources page here, these being all the different levels of Tuttle's stages of formative assessment, and you need to include at least 3 of these for every one of your formative assessments. Okay, like they did here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 in this one. In the Google Hangout here, it looks like there's only 2, which is interesting, making this an example. But, you know, this is one of those things that when you're submitting your portfolio, it's just super important to have in place. Because if it's not, if we won't pass it unless it has these things. Okay, it's just it's just one of the things that LEC really looks at, and this is kind of like the signature assignment of this LEC course, is putting together this holistic assessment plan. Okay, part 3 is the summative assessment. Okay, there has to be some kind of summative project. Okay, and it should have 3 or more criteria in the rubric. Okay, and this should be accompanied by a student work example or student work sample, and it could be something that you just create if you've never done this with students. It could be something that you just create to mock up a student sample. Hopefully this helped. I know it went a little lengthy. I was planning on it being 5 minutes, and here we are at 12 minutes. But I hope it helped, and good luck. And if you have any questions about any of this, please don't hesitate to contact myself and Jeff.